Well, hello everybody. Welcome. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. Let me share screen and get us oriented to our conversation. All right, so tonight we will be doing a book chat on A Little Less Broken, how an autism diagnosis made me whole by Miriam Schembari. Before we begin, closed captions are enabled. You just have to toggle them on if you'd like to use them. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the closed caption icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. Or you could choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. If you're new to Brain Club, welcome. This is our weekly community education program for purposes of demonstrating All Brains Belong's approach to neuro-inclusive culture and to shift broader community awareness of some of the issues of importance and concern to the neurodivergent community, so as to promote new ways of thinking and being, and that you all go off into the rest of your lives and spread the word. So that's how we think of systems change. Well, we hope that Brain Club is a place where you feel safe, a place where, right from the very first time, you feel like this is a supportive or a supported space. This is not a support group. It is not a place for addressing individualized situations or personal needs or personal requests. It's also not for medical or mental health advice. We do have other programs for those purposes, but this one is for education purposes only. So we invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like, and to think about how what you learn connects to your life. There is no one right way to participate. You can have your video on or off. Even if it is on, we don't expect anything of you. We certainly do not need you to sit still or look at the camera or any of those other neuronormative constructs. So feel free to walk or move or fidget or stim or eat or take breaks. Anything else that needs doing. During the discussion portion of tonight, you're welcome to participate with mouth words or in the chat. And observation is a completely valid form of participation. In addition to affirming all aspects of identity, Brain Club, and all of our programs, we prioritize the group's collective needs over that of any one individual. Lizzie's going to put in the chat our full community agreement as written by our community advisory board. That's my visual support to make sure I can see the chat, and I actually can for a change. Hello, everybody. If this is your first time at Brain Club, oh, amazing! The person who recommended tonight's book just arrived. That's very exciting. Okay, anyway, if it's your first time at Brain Club, it's okay not to understand what's happening. Just keep coming back, and just hang out. We recommend observing the first time or two, getting the lay of the land. And Lizzie's going to put the frequently asked questions in the chat, which covers a lot of the logistics questions that come up when folks are new. Before we begin, an exciting announcement. Our next webinar is 2 weeks from today, Tuesday, April 8th at 6 o'clock. This is our 4th annual Shifting the Autism Narrative, the Impact of Stigma on Health. And so for those of you who've been part of our community for a while, we do this every April, of course, being Autism Acceptance Month, which is not always accepted by the autistic community, because a lot of the times it's performative and superficial and doesn't actually address any issues of importance to actually autistic people. So we do this webinar to address some really important issues. including the way that the healthcare system is failing the autistic community. And we update it every year. This year, we're going to be talking about diagnostic gatekeeping and barriers and additional barriers, and what we can do instead. And just we announce this every week. We are continuing to collect medicines and supplies and monetary donations to support the All Brains Belong Community Health and Access Fund. This was an initiative started by patients in our community as mutual aid for other patients in our community who are struggling right now. And in particular with continuing threats. The current need really is we've run out of grocery cards, and so we are really looking for some support with grocery cards or monetary donations so that we can buy grocery cards. That's really what our patients need right now. So we would really appreciate your help and support if you have capacity. Okay, so in March 2025, we have been, throughout the month, we have been exploring the journey of neurodivergent identity formation through different contexts. And tonight, A Little Less Broken, by Miriam Schembari. A Little Less Broken, How an Autism Diagnosis Finally Made Me Whole. This is, and by the way, we do book chat almost every month, and we never have any expectation that anybody has read the book or listened to the book. We pull out quotes and themes so that we can talk about it. So don't feel like, wait, I didn't read the book. It's completely fine. Most people have not. What I can say about this book, because I did read this book, this is one of the most powerful books I have read in recent times. I thought that, because there's so many memoirs of late identified neurodivergent people, but this one I thought was particularly raw and authentic, which was just really powerful. We're going to talk about some of the themes that stood out to our staff about this book. First, about the author, Miriam Schembari is a late diagnosed autistic writer, and who tells the story of growing up in a Puerto Rican family and what it was like to what she remembers throughout different chapters of her life, from early childhood through adulthood, becoming a parent for the first time. And as so many people who do not learn that they are autistic until they are so taxed and so their capacity so exceeded by the demands of their life that finally they start presenting in a way that that professionals recognize and pattern match to be the pattern of autism. What a world it could be if we could learn about our true selves without reaching such profound levels of burnout and dysregulation. But that was not the experience of the author. So, what this book is about is not only discussing how an autism diagnosis can be life-changing and narrative shifting, but talks about some of the real challenges, from autistic burnout to specific contributions of masking, and all of the misdiagnoses that many people acquire throughout their lives. They acquire, 40 different mental health diagnoses, but they don't acquire a diagnosis of autism. So let's look at some themes. So, the first theme we're going to talk about relates to identity and ways. Yeah, Steve, exactly. The resume that so many people acquire, the laundry list of diagnoses, but not actually addressing the core of what's going on. So the way that someone comes to understand themselves so often comes from the words or the lens or the labels the lens that they're, looking at themselves through, and the lens and the impact on identity formation. So this quote from the prologue. Why do we so desperately want to label ourselves? All those quirks and habits and idiosyncrasies wrapped up in a neat little bow. To be human is so complex. How could we hope to capture it all in a single word? And yet millions of personality tests float around the internet, promising to define us in a dog breed, a Beazles song, or a Disney character reimagined as a piece of cheese. We take them over and over, desperate to see ourselves reflected somewhere other than the isolation of our minds. So, Mary Schembari tells the story of growing up as a young child, and she describes these for me really relatable moments of profound dysregulation. So, I'm gonna read this passage where she's describing after school coming home, like holding it together at school, and then coming home and like completely flipping her lid. She's doing homework at the kitchen table. She's not understanding it. She's struggling with it. And her mother's trying to like move her along and like get her through her homework. Inside my brain, a wall slammed shut. I scanned the worksheet and I saw 30 more questions, each harder than the last. And oh God, there was a back. My head fell like a cannonball to the warm wooden tabletop. The moment I thought about my cozy bed and remembered I had 30 problems swimming before me, another wall slammed shut, cutting off my ability to form words to explain exactly where I was confused. Mom's eyebrows knit together, and I felt an added squeeze of pressure. Focus, I told myself. It didn't help. No part of me understood the shapes on the page. Marion, Mom prodded. Stop it! I shoved myself back from the table, grabbed the wooden chair between us, and hurled it toward her. Just stop it! Mom dodged backwards, and the chair clattered sideways to the floor. The words ripped up my throat. I don't understand. I don't understand any of this. Without pausing to turn back, I sprinted through the dining room and up the stairs. When I made it to my bedroom, the exertion only agitated me further, anger careening through me like shrapnel. I wrenched open the door, flung my body around it, and slammed it closed with every ounce of my 13-year-old strength. This kind of thing happened all the time. Curious, is that relatable to anyone? Certainly relatable to me. Yeah. Oh, I love Tracy's comment in the chat. One of my favorite feelings is shared humanity. Yeah, Tracy, exactly. So that sounds so much like dyscalculia, right? But yeah, Sarah, yeah, me too. So memories of that with math homework specifically. Yeah. My feelings didn't have enough space in my body. Tells the story of her parents asking her, "What is wrong with you? Get it together." But you cannot bully yourself into a new personality. Without understanding what was happening to me, I felt the rage overtake me again and again. Mom's go-to phrase was, "I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells around you." My response, although I never said it out loud, was, "How do you think it feels to be the egg?" For years, I thought I had an anger management problem. In my 20s, therapists used the phrase emotional dysregulation, but that language never felt quite right to me either. Sure, there were times where I was dysregulated, but those feelings were precursors to the instant when I exploded into violence rather than the entire experience. What was really happening, I know now, was an autistic meltdown. Meltdowns happen when our mental capacity exceeds its limit and we temporarily lose control of our behavior. Autistic meltdowns usually happen after continued, inescapable exposure to sensory triggers or cognitive challenges. I'm not the only late identified autistic person to mislabel a meltdown as rage, bad behavior, or poor impulse control. I thought I was having panic attacks or fits of anger where I would throw stuff. I experienced this all the time as a child. Meltdowns can look different from one autistic person to another. For me, they looked like fury and violence, throwing, slamming, breaking, hitting. Sometimes I would cry so long and so hard that the capillaries below my eyes would hemorrhage, causing a smattering of small red freckles that would last for days. The rage didn't end until the mystery did. And the mystery, of course, being when the author received an autism diagnosis. The next theme we're going to talk about, the struggle of inauthenticity, the pressure to mask or conform versus the need to be fully oneself. The whole book talks about the emotional toll of pretending to be quote normal, and the author describes this pressure to mask in early childhood through her present day adulthood in the workplace. So in childhood, she describes this, for me, very relatable episode where she's at a sleepover with her friends, and the friends are, so she's like, I don't know exactly how old she was. Let me see. Young. The vibe I'm getting was that this took place when she was young, like in elementary school. And so kids are having a sleepover, they're having a pillow fight. "What are you doing standing there?" her friend Elena called from the inside their cuddle pile. "Come on, Mare, jump in," Chelsea said, always the camp counselor. I couldn't tell you why I didn't want to play. Was I afraid of looking silly? Did I not want to be touched? All I know is that resistance appeared in my body for what seemed like no logical reason. No matter how hard I tried to make myself move the way I thought I was supposed to, I couldn't. My brain shouted, "Get out!" I wanted to disappear into the floorboards, or better yet, run out the door and back home to my quiet bedroom with my books and my collection of sea glass. If I slipped out, would they even notice? I didn't want to be noticed. I'd changed my mind. I didn't need a friend in the sandbox. I was perfectly happy alone. My throat closed and my feet rooted to the spot as if someone had poured concrete over me. Any lingering energy sucked out of me in a whoosh, and all that remained was an angry shell, a voice in my head trying to bully me into participating. "Just jump in, Mary, and have fun. This is what girls do. You're such a loser. Will you loosen up already? Come on, they're staring at you. You look like such a weirdo. Jump, Marion, jump." I didn't jump. I stood there on that bright Saturday morning in my best friend's living room, eyes darting for an exit, stuck on the thought that I was not, in fact, like the other girls, and it was only a matter of time before they realized it too. Yeah, a lot of comments in the chat. Yep, with resonance. Yeah, I don't do loosen up either. So then in college, forgot. I like went through and like put shreds of envelope to get, then I like forgot and I'm like counting the pages. Okay, sorry. Um, of course I was fake. My friendships only worked because I reflected people back to themselves. I mirrored mannerisms and outfits. By the time I was 19, I had been called lazy, moody, sensitive, harsh, weird, annoying, mean, and buzzkill by everyone from my parents to my teachers to my most beloved friends. Of course, I flattened myself into the purest, shiniest mirror I could, focusing all my energy into matching their every movement like those icebreaker games we played in school. Every autistic woman I've spoken with or whose work I've read had a story about their copycat tendencies. Some carried physical scripts so they know exactly what to say and when. Sometimes these scripts came from movies. Others were transcribed conversations they still kept tucked in their notebooks to reference later. Hold on. Being a dyslexic person at book chat is very difficult for me. Hearing stories from other autistic people has helped me forgive College Marion for all the ways she tried to mend her brokenness. I didn't trust myself to be interesting or lovable on my own. I assumed that things that made a person worthy were external, like blue boots and sugary perfume, or the number of people who stopped by my dorm room after class. For some autistics, masking works. It allows us to belong to a community, which is apparently our most ancient impulse. But what if friendship isn't your natural instinct? What if, no matter how hard you try, people just don't like the real you? And then later in the workplace, we'll get there. So she tells a whole bunch of stories about like trying to fit in the workplace and then like couldn't hold it together and would get dysregulated and would get fired. And like, she tells a story of like just a revolving door of different jobs. And then she gets her autism diagnosis and she shares that she basically figured out her access needs and requested accommodations. And then she says, most important, I could breathe again. This is the longest I'd ever managed to stay anywhere. I actually liked my job. In this small way, I learned to stop forcing myself to perform in an environment that wasn't built for me. It was the kindest thing I had ever done for myself. Maybe I'll pause here. How's this landing? Pressure to hide one's true self. Hey, Sierra, go for it.
Um, for me, I think this is a really great example of why frequently people at intersections of marginalized identities are more often underdiagnosed or underrecognized. Because that feeling of like being an outsider as a kid can be easily attributed to another marginalized identity. And then, you don't realize the masking and all of that is part of something like neurodivergence, which is already so underdiagnosed or underrecognized. Yeah, it was really interesting hearing this and seeing how similar that feeling of being othered is similar to, stories I hear about queer kids and fat kids and kids of color and kind of all these identities where it's that same othering feeling.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about this author, she actually explicitly acknowledges that she thought she was being bullied because of her ethnicity. She thought that's why she felt othered. And 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 that was pretty much acknowledged by her family. Yeah, such an important point. And I think, specifically as it relates to autism, the DSM five stereotypes of autism are, you know, white, cis, 4-year-old boys. And that is, I mean, I think I think this comes up at Brain Club all the time. Back to back to our slides. The next thing we're going to talk about healing, recovery from trauma. Um, the author writes about the impact of her past experiences on identity and self-worth, and describes, her non-linear journey. Much like, for I think in our community, right, probably the majority of people have had significant relational trauma. And I think the point that she's making is that learning that she's autistic is like it was a missing piece of healing and missing piece of recovery, and that healing didn't happen until that missing piece for her. She tells a story as a young child. She comes home from school. Um, she's being bullied. She comes home and tells her mom, "My friends don't want to be friends with me." And that the immediate response is, "Well, what did you do?" You're right. The bad news is that you can make accommodations only if you've identified the problem. Neither I nor my parents had the language to talk about what was happening to me. So at 13, all I knew was what I was told. And there are only so many times you can tell a girl she's broken before she starts to believe it. Later in the book, Marion Schembari describes the trauma of parenting. She describes having a year, and I think this is like such a relatable experience for many parents of autistic babies. She describes a year of a baby who did not stop crying, who, there was concern, she was concerned that there was something really, very, very wrong happening because she didn't know any other babies who didn't stop crying for a year. So she went through this whole extensive medical evaluation and describes being dismissed by the healthcare system. Is told that there's nothing wrong and that her concerns were unfounded. I experienced postpartum depression. Sorry, reading is hard at this hour and like all the hours. I expected postpartum depression, but I hadn't expected this. To love my daughter fully, but to be incapable of being around her more than a few minutes without losing my mind. I couldn't handle the sensations of parenthood, of motherhood. I'm a terrible mother. I can't handle even 3 minutes of crying. I'm not just invalidating her feelings, I'm punishing her for them. That's her talking to herself. So I couldn't handle the sensations of motherhood, the constant climbing and pawing, the need to bounce and rock, the crying, the lack of sleep. My body was a too tight guitar string, ready to snap at any moment. which I did at least once a week for 2 years. Her cries were knives in my eardrums and chest. Her touch on my body was fire. It was impossible to be the mother I imagined. And I hated myself for even thinking that, which of course added another layer of guilt and shame. She was just being a baby. That's what babies do. But if I couldn't handle this, a normal baby with normal baby behaviors, then I had already failed before motherhood had even truly begun. And I think that um, for for so many autistic people, who, by the way, it's very common that um, autistic adults, many learn that they are autistic after their child is identified to be autistic. That's a common pathway for self-discovery. Autism is a highly heritable, um, different way of being wired. Um, every autistic person has at least one autistic parent, but oftentimes it's not identified until the other way around. And I think for many autistic adults who don't know about their brains and have never really thought about their sensory processing, the sensory processing experience of parenthood, without having any lens for understanding it, is impossibly hard. And the shame, I mean, what's really being described here is shame. And I think that people don't talk about this. I think it's really important that this is talked about, that it's written about. Um, and Lizzie, when you have a chance, if you could drop in the chat, we've done two brain clubs related to this. One is Dr. Laura Lewis came and presented on her findings of the birth experiences of autistic adults. Then we also did experiences of autistic parents. I think we did that in 2023. Yeah, puppies, right? So just unexpected sensory trauma is really what that's about. Whether it's parenthood or um, puppy parenthood, or moving to a new place that happens to be by the train, just unexpected sensory trauma. And I think that when we think back to the theme of identity, if it is part of one's identity to um, be performing or showing up in a particular way, and the reality of that lived experience is like the core anti-value of like how it's not important for you to be as a parent or whatever your role is. I think that is what really sets people up for shame. So eventually the author decides to meet someone, like many other people. They so if the pathway of my child's identified to be autistic, so I start learning about autism, that pathway. There's also I meet an autistic person or autistic people and I start learning about autism that way. Like, so there's all these different pathways. So the author also had the experience of meeting an autistic person and really feeling like there was a lot of resonant experience. So she writes. She's telling that she's the context for what a passage I'm about to read is basically like she's there's that moment where like she knew. So I knew, I finally knew exactly who I was. For a week, I didn't say anything to anyone, not even her partner. I kept the news hidden inside myself, tucked up like a delicate sprout, terrified that the lightest rain, the gentlest puff of wind, would stunt its growth, causing it to wither and die before it ever grew. The first thing I did, of course, was turn to Google. Am I autistic? I asked. Take this free autism test and get instant results, Google said. So I took a dozen tests, right clicking each one until my browser window was too full to see their titles. Each was a version of the autism spectrum quotient, a self administered and slightly outdated questionnaire. Most of the tests included a number of statements that I answered on a scale from definitely agree to definitely disagree. Um, Again and again, the test tabulated their results, and I bounced to my knees as the page loaded. Significant autistic traits, they told me. How could this be? How could I, at 34 years old, just not know? Autistic people were 8-year-old boys who didn't talk, or who did talk, but only about trains or robots or dinosaurs. Autistic people screamed in public and flapped their hands and banged their heads against the wall. My face flooded with shame at that thought. I was a monster. I worried that I was trying to align myself with the oppressed to feel special and excuse a lifetime of shitty behavior. But then she describes a period of time that many people go through of the decision to, or just the recognition that what I know of autism is limited to stereotypes. And actually, what we're going to cover at the webinar in 2 weeks is where that narrative comes from. So she seeks diagnosis. She gets a diagnosis. She, in fact, then feels like, well, there must be something wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with the evaluation because, like, how could I not have known before? So she gets a second evaluation, who also agrees that she's autistic. So now she's further bought into this narrative. All right, so I think this is our last slide. So she's thinking back all these painful, traumatic memories throughout her life. I leaned my head against the wall and stared at the dusty ceiling. Autistic. The girls in fourth grade cornering me in a closet for being too weird. No, autistic. Watching my best friends wrestle on the floor while I stood rooted behind the couch thinking, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Nothing. Autistic. In college, quivering between days in bed, never brushing my teeth or hair or getting dressed for class, and copying the roommates' every outfit and mannerism, hoping that if I looked normal on the outside, it would seep into my pores and change my genetic coding. Autistic. At work, trying to endure the office noise and chaos until I ran into the bathroom, lazy and worthless. No, autistic. I rubbed my face with my palms, trying to erase the decades of stories I'd been telling myself. So there we are. So I'd love to hear. Oh, by the way, I never turned on the backup recording. Um, love to hear what's standing out. What are you going to take away from this discussion, either in the chat or out loud? Lucy says more self-acceptance. Colette sharing reflection on revisiting a lens when we don't have this piece. There's, stories from generations past that when viewed through, maybe the lens of autism or other neurodivergence, it's a different story for sure. Any other reflections? What you're taking away from the themes we've talked about? Summer says that we are not alone and there's so much change to happen in the future. Oh, I love that. Liz.
Um, I think what I'm thinking about is just how much she persisted. She just kept going, kept questioning. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this book. She wouldn't stop at the answers that life presented her with. And the peace came when she was able to see, oh, I can be reflected differently. I'm not a monster. I am a whole person. I have my foibles, but I'm not lazy. I'm not strange. I'm just a person trying to make it through the world like everyone else. And that self-acceptance and that just dogged pursuit is just um so precious to me.
Beautiful reflection. And I think that it's an invitation to us all to be, reflecting on self-narrative. What am I telling myself about who I am and how I am? And is there an opportunity to rewrite some of those narratives through the lens of what you later come to learn? And through the lens of the stories that we learn from other people, including this one. Thank you. Keaton says, I'm taking away the awareness aspect of this meeting. I found it eye-opening to have you read this literature and to see how these experiences have correlated to real life experiences. I feel like we need more resources like this at home for people to stay aware and educated. Excited to read the book. Well, wow, I can't imagine a more beautiful way of wrapping up this discussion. Thank you all so much for being here and being part of this. Lizzie, can you put in the chat? Oh, look at you. You're already like ready to go. So that is the registration for April Brain Club, and it's a different Zoom link next week. So it's a different Zoom link. And can you one more time put the registration link for the webinar, which is the week after? That's a different registration link. The webinars usually bring in a larger audience, so we always use a different Zoom link for that. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. We hope to see you next Tuesday. Bye.